Call this meeting of the Woburn School Committee to order. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent, please call the roll.
Mr. Austin.
Present.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yeah.
Ms. Cormier.
Present.
Ms. Crowley.
Present.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Present.
Ms. Wetzel.
Present.
Mr. Lipset.
Present. All right, we have approval of 2:28 and 3:06 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve both.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the committee this evening? No, I see none. I do see school principals, Mr. Ken Casaros from the Goodyear, Mr. Wayne Clark from the Shamrock, and Dr. Linda Riley from the Alta Vista. Thank you for joining us this evening. All right. City Council liaison to the school committee. I do not see Mr. Viola this evening. And our student representative is unable to join us. So we are all ready to reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff. Dr. Crowley.
Sure. So SEIU ratified contracts. I wanted just to highlight a couple different things. So we did settle with both, with all parties are now settled. Tonight, it's the secretaries and the custodial units. We invited people, they couldn't make it, but I just wanted to say thank you to the SEIU negotiating team and the leaders of those units, and also to Jen Judkins, Colleen Cormier, Mike Mulrennan, who served on the negotiating team. Just want to say publicly thank you to all parties involved, and in theory, we were going to have a big picture op and everything, but we're just going to say this happened, and I think the contracts are signed, so I don't know if the people on the negotiating team want to weigh in at all, but just...
No.
I think, as I may, Mr. Chairman, same as the superintendent said, we thank Jen Jenkins and the entire team here, the admin office. Going back in my calendar, it was over a year for the custodians. A lot have been going on, during that time, but to get back to the table and get settled and have it done, I think was a cap in their hat, as they say. So we're just going to move forward with, their current contract, as the others are all done now. So it's good to see it's over and done with. But I appreciate the efforts of, the administration here, as well as the custodian union that, came and negotiated such a great opportunity for both parties, I believe. So thank you for that.
I will also thank Jen Judkins as well for her assistance in this, wrapping it up.
Yeah,
Quickly as she did.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Chisholm.
Do we have any highlights or things that we could outline from each contract? Things that they got, things that we got, rough draft? No?
I don't have my notes with me.
I would have prepped differently
Okay,
to answer
sorry.
that question.
All right, we can bring it through personnel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah.
I know. Lucky guy.
Bring them tomorrow.
All right. Any other comments or questions on this? All right, so I would accept a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between SEIU Local 888, the Woburn Administrative Assistance Chapter, and the Woburn School Committee.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
I'm sorry.
Roll call.
Any discussion on the motion first? No. Roll call vote.
Mr. Austin.
Yes.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan.
In favor?
Ms. Wetzel.
Yes.
Mr. Lipset.
Yes. All right, that motion is approved.
Yay. Great job.
Congratulations to all.
Awesome.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we take the FY25 budget out of
Give me a
order.
second, because we also have to approve the custodian's contract.
Even better.
So I am going to sign on behalf of the school committee here.
I thought we did both at once.
Okay. And now I would accept a motion to approve the contract between the Woburn School Committee and SEIU Local 888, the Woburn Custodians Chapter.
Motion to
moved.
approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Austin.
Yes.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
In favor.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Yes.
Ms. Wetzel.
Yes.
Mr. Lipset.
Yes. right, that motion is approved as well. And this has already been signed by Mr. Mulrennan. Do we have to pass this all the way around? No. All right, these contracts are approved, and congratulations to all, and thank you all for a productive session. All right, so, Ms. Cormier, you were going to make a motion.
I was, and I would like to make that motion still, to take the FY25 discussion of the budget out of order, if we could.
I have a motion to take the FY25 budget out of order. Do I have a second? Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So that brings us to the FY25 budget. Dr. Trout.
Okay. So I'm going to try to tell a story and walk the committee and anybody that's interested through the budgeting process. A lot of the information that you'll hear is what you've heard before, slightly different format. Feel free to stop and ask questions as we go through this, because there might be some that we know the answer to and we're not sharing. We're not trying to hold anything back. I would tell you it's been a collaborative process. I want to thank Assistant Superintendents Ms. Young, Ms. Ryan, but also, and really importantly, Mr. Dizio, who's the new Finance Director for the Woburn Public Schools, for putting up with us in this process. Mr. Dizio has been with us for not very long, but inherited a budget process almost the day he walked in, and so he's been working tirelessly to figure out what it means to be the finance director in the Woburn Public Schools. Has a great finance background, but is learning, horizontal columns, language, paraprofessionals. So, and appreciate the work that he's done with the budget and will continue to do with the budget. So I'll do the majority of the explanation, but if you need any level of detail, Alex, Mr. Dizio has backup to support any questions that you have. So without further ado, as always, we try to go through the budget and align with our strategic plan, with our vision statement, and that our priority areas are being met. And so deeper learning is the first area of priority. Tiered systems of support is the second level of priority, and systems and structures to support the Woburn Public Schools and maintain what we are doing and what we want to do in the future. So again, trying to, as we go through the budgeting process, it's not just we're asking for more money, we're trying to align it to our philosophy and the adopted strategic plan. So our FY25 proposed budget, we went back and forth quite a bit, to be candid with you, on what our starting point really is. And so we believe our starting point to be the $80 million that is right up front there. And the reason we arrived at that number is since July 1st, and we've talked about this with the committee, we have added new positions. So we've added the newly arrived positions, the paraprofessional, reading teachers, HR person. And so when we passed the budget back last June, it was at $78.9 million. Since that time, with the committee's approval and City Hall's approval, we've added these positions. That adds $1.1 million to our $78 million starting point. So we're suggesting that the percentages that we're talking about are taken from this $80 million starting point rather than the $78 million starting point. Is that okay? We have, and again, we've done this in subcommittee, but there are some really significant budget drivers that I kind of want to highlight to the committee and ask whether it's Maureen, Courtney, or Alex to support anything. So the biggest budget drivers we have, the number one budget driver is our salary increases. This is our contractual obligations. So that's 36.1% of our budget, and the difference is $4.5 million from last year to this year. the salary increase has gone up 4.5%. At the bottom of the pie chart, the yellow sliver is out of district. So if you remember last year, the city took $1.8 million of the out of district expense. That's in our budget currently, and that is a 13.5% driver. The ESSER funds at $1.7 million is currently in our budget because those funded really important positions in our district. And so I'm starting there because if you take the salary increase at $4.5 million, the out of district at 1.8, and the ESSER at 1.7, it's a $8 million starting point. So I'm saying that because our percent is high. We know that. Ms. Chisholm's been very, vocal as the finance chair about that. Add to those, we also have line item increases that happen every year. So the out-of-district costs go up every year. Our ESY program goes up every year. Special ed transportation goes up every year. It's up budgeted $1 million more this year than last year. The contract is out for bid right now. And so these are real numbers. The electricity, our line item there has increased. As everybody here pays an electrical bill, we know those costs have skyrocketed. And so what we've done, our attempt is to budget what we believe we need to adequately fund the Woburn Public Schools for 2024-2025 school year. But these are the most significant drivers that contribute to the FY 25 presented budget. Some of the challenges that we have as a district, again, a lot of this is a repeat from last night even. We have 335 new students in the Woburn Public Schools this year that we didn't have. And I think Ms. Wetzel last night was really powerful when you're commenting about, if you look at our lower level grade levels, those are really where kids are moving in. And so our first grade is at 384 students right now. And that would be by far the largest graduating class in a long time at Woburn Memorial High School. So people are coming to Woburn. They're not coming before the budget. They're coming when they come. And so we have to fund to the extent that we can to plan for this. And I think when I go back a couple slides in my head and we're adding positions, we're trying to not do that. We're trying to ask for what is needed now so that we don't have to keep coming back and say, we have, X we need. And this committee and the city has been terrific. It's always been, yes, do that. But it just leads to this issue where we don't have the staff that we need when we know that we need it in September. So again, the other part that I would highlight here is the enrollment, the number is 4513. The EL or ML population is almost 15% now. And so kids are still coming. I was in a class this week. It's first day of school for students. And so that number has skyrocketed over the past couple of years. Our IEP percent is close to 25% of our students. So over 1,000 students are in IEPs. That requires more, not less, as far as it relates to budget. And the 504s are similar, with almost 300 students on 504s. And so, again, the needs of our kids are different than they were even a few years ago. And so I credit the teachers every day because they're in the classrooms with challenging situations. The administration at the school level is doing a great job. Our budget is really put together by their asks to support them. And so wanted to highlight the complexity of the budget and the complexity of the needs of our kids as it relates to the budget. It's a challenging time to be in public education, and I'm grateful to be in Woburn because I do think we are rising up to meet those challenges. So. The biggest components of our budget, 75% of the budget is salary. And so that's about average if you were to take that and look at other districts. Our out-of-district tuition is 8.4%. Transportation is 6.9%. And so supplies and other materials and utilities really add up to just over 7%. There's not a lot of things in our budget that are extra. I'm just being very, very transparent. So, again, when we're looking then to make adjustments to the budget to bring it down, we would have to be looking more at salaries than anywhere else. So just to be perfectly clear.
Can I interrupt you for a question?
Certainly.
Before I forget it?
Yeah.
Is our transportation percentage of our budget higher than similar districts in the budget, in the overall budget?
It's a good question. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I can certainly look into that.
Why would you know that?
Yeah.
Right.
So-
I quickly
Yeah.
learned that right before the meeting. I feel like 7% of the entire budget is a lot spent on transportation. Is that both?
Yes, generally.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
curious about
Yeah.
that. Sorry, thank you.
And so, like I said, about relative to special ed transportation is budgeted at $4 million. We're in the last year of our regular ed transportation, so we can expect that a year from now, if we have a settled transportation contract with the regular ed, that percent is going to be up higher as well. So it's a burden that we're going to have to figure out. All set?
Yeah, I mean, I asked a question that was thoughtfully answered, so I'm just gonna.
So I'm going to turn it over a little bit to Mr. Dizio to walk through some of the scenarios that he's gone through, some of the effort to kind of think about ways to offset the budget, and appreciate the effort that he's done to do this. So I'll have Alex go now.
Thanks, Dr. Crowley. So with the previously mentioned budget constraints, I think we need to look at creative ways to sort of alleviate some of these constraints. One of the things that I looked at is offering early retirement incentive to employees. We last did this, I believe, ahead of the fiscal '21 budget. And it's important to note that these numbers that I've looked at, they take into account the fact that all 17 teachers and nurses who are currently eligible, meaning that they have already put in notice to us for fiscal '25, '26, or '27 of the intention to retire. Last time we did this, we also had about 7 employees come and say that they would take this benefit in addition to those people. So I do think that these numbers could change when we actually look at the option of rolling them out. But if you were to read this chart, the very first option up there is at $20,000 flat. We would anticipate a savings of $248,000. To put that into, a percentage, because I know that everyone cares about getting that 16% down, that would move this budget about 1/4%. The one option would be at the city level to take on this one-time payout. And if they did that, that would move it substantially more, but we're still not getting to a full percentage point. But this is one area that we have looked at as a relief opportunity with the budget constraint. If we go to the next slide.
Actually,
Sure.
I think you said it, but I just want to repeat it. So,
Sure.
The key assumption is that we have 17 people that have already committed to retire in the next couple of years. We had to use some number to generate this. That 17 ostensibly will change because there might be people that haven't put in any retirement paperwork, but might take this. It's just, we have no way of knowing. And so we've done this in the past. I think we did it 2 years, and we yielded 7 teachers in the past. So again, I would anticipate, and it's 7 staff, because we pushed it out to everybody. It's hard to know where people are in their life, and so, but I do think that there's a support at the city level to push this forward, and I think it might be a way to help the budget if we can. So,
Do you remember how much we offered in the 21 budget?
yeah, it was 10%.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
I can remember it was a flat.
Yeah.
Or not.
yeah, it was, yeah. So, all right.
So the next area that we looked at was user fees, and these include things like charging for athletics, charging for bus transportation, charging for student parking, student activities, or technology, which is generally a Chromebook maintenance fee. There are many communities around us that charge these fees. That being said, there are still some, such as Burlington, that for the most part don't charge any of these fees. One, again, a key assumption, we're working with, estimates here, so it's important to point out these key assumptions, because based on those, these numbers could change, and they could change drastically. For athletics and transportation, one assumption is that we would keep the same number of athletes and the same number of bus riders year over year. The second one is that all of those athletes and bus riders would have the means to and would pay these fees. And lastly, this doesn't take into account any caps. I would say that every community around us that charges these offers some sort of a family cap. So, a family of 3 or 4 isn't paying astronomical fees in order to put their kids on a bus or put them through athletics. Some of the other ones that we looked at that I thought were interesting, and I guess more of across the board, the premise would be that for student activities and technology, it would be a $35 to $50 charge for across the board for high school students, whether it was a student activity fee or a technology fee, which presumably would be a Chromebook maintenance charge. And then you do see the various savings, again, for the most part, not moving the needle too much, but it is an area of relief that we did look at. Any questions on user fees? Okay. So we also explored areas of relief where our city partner may have an appetite to alleviate some of the budget constraints. For the most part, these were areas that are less education-centric. Such areas as special education transportation, homeless transportation, general ed transportation, utilities. While obviously they are important to the students, it isn't necessarily education-centric, and it could be something, hopefully, that the city may have an appetite to explore taking on and taking out of the education budget.
I think with that too, that looking at, I guess, expenses that are a little bit more volatile, that we can't necessarily always know or predict, and so it could be this number or not, so instead of us holding that kind of flexibility on our budget and be holding on the same side.
And they would have a versus the last 2 slides where you're seeing, mostly a quarter, 0.5% of an increase, you're seeing, $4 million is a 4.25%, change in percentage. So that's a pretty substantial and significant number to be looking at when you're looking at a 16% budget.
And I would share that the mayor, well, he came to the resource subcommittee meeting and, talked a little about facilities, but we had this conversation with him, and he is saying all options are on the table. So I want the committee to know that we've had the conversation. There's been no decision, but we've engaged in that dialogue. So.
And then lastly, and this is relatively new, especially based on last night's vote, we have begun to explore potential cost savings relating to redistricting. One thing that's important to note is that in trying to become more efficient, there are additional cost savings that right now can't be measured, that I think as we have a better idea of what that redistricting will look like, we would be able to provide sort of a better idea of what that total cost savings would be versus the budget.
And the other thing, obviously, we could figure out quickly is if you have 10 teachers, we took the salary of 70,000. So that's the number we were working from, just to be overly transparent. It might not be that, it might be a different number, but wanted to use a starting point for the committee and for the public. And again, we don't know what these numbers will be, but just to kind of indicate that it's as a result of last night's conversation, wanted to have a slide or some kind of information purpose for the committee's information.
On this slide, it doesn't take into account that we may have to increase busing, though. Should we?
Correct.
Have to do that. And does this include other staff members also, or just teaching staff?
On this slide, I would say just teaching, but it's really 10 people at 70,000 per person.
I have a question about homeless transportation. Sorry.
I'm waiting for some.
Is homeless transportation refunded by federal government under McKinney-Vento? Don't we get funding for that, or no?
We don't hit,
We have to hit a certain threshold?
right,
Oh, okay.
for grant funding.
Got it. All right.
What is that threshold?
I don't actually know what the threshold is. We
Yeah, I
get
don't
funding
either.
for some different areas. We have funding, there has been some recent funding that has come in for students that enrolled, for example, newly arrived students.
Right.
That then
Right.
moved to another district. That has been,
Yeah, right, right,
Funded.
right.
but it's, the homeless transportation, I would say, is a very fluid number.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And that is one where we've seen pretty significant increases in both of the last 2 years.
Yes, both in the number of students
Right.
that need to be transported, as well as the rates for the transports.
And actually, I'm going to put her on the spot slightly, but Ms. McLeod is the person that coordinates the homeless transportation and has done this for the Woburn Public Schools for a number of years.
Yeah.
So you've seen the dramatic numbers and change. Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. So, it definitely,
Yeah, that's a very nice.
And we're
Yes.
using the word homeless, but it encompasses children in DCF custody and children have been displaced by other reasons. But
Yes.
the
Yes.
legal term is
Yes.
homeless, but
Yes.
it's not. It encompasses a lot of children in crisis.
yes.
Foster care as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
foster.
Okay,
And I
so
would
you
say
can have
too,
that.
sorry, I was gonna say, I think too, our coordination with that, now that we have the base staff, I think has helped too, in us kind of recognizing who needs transportation.
Yeah.
We have had some questions as we go. We have more. Ms. Wetzel.
Yeah, a question around specifically special education transportation. I'm not even sure if this is something we could do, but it just occurred to me as you were speaking. But could we share transportation with another district? If we had a student, say, going to Perkins, and they had a student next door going to Perkins, could we do like a ride share situation and save money that way?
So
And have a buddy on the bus?
I'll answer quickly, and then I'll turn to Maureen to give you more detail. So we have a contract with NRT through Scene Collaborative, so we try to cost share it that way already, and then
Yeah, so we, I would say the transportation is, we have a primary vendor, NRT, which is through the scene transportation contract. There are other vendors that are used when there is a need. The way it works is they do the routing based on the most efficient way with other districts. So there's a lot of, sometimes one might assume that if we had a student going they would be paired with another student from Woburn, and it isn't necessarily the way that it works. It's optimized to be efficient for all of the districts, is what happens. And the rates that you pay vary based on the size of the vehicle, the number of students, whether a monitor is needed on the vehicle or for the student, et cetera.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
That actually is reimbursable through circuit breaker, and the percentage for special education transportation reimbursement has gone up every year.
So that's helpful.
Mr. Mulrennan, you had something?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm not sure where.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wenzel, you were all set, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess to the administration, sounds as though all, I'm losing track of who's getting renewed for contracts. Regular busing, NRT busing, and athletic busing all up for renewal, or just?
Athletic busing and special ed education, transportation is up for renewal. We have one more year
On
with
the
the
regular
regular,
busing.
yes.
Okay, those are my concerns there. Just, again, with the vote last evening, kind of like what if, so these are another, unknowns that we're not sure of. And again, not gonna go down, so I just wasn't sure where we're in the cycle of who's up for renewal. So appreciate that, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Corr?
Thank you. First, I appreciate the starting point where it is, because I think this was something I was really kind of hung up on last time, that at the end of the last fiscal year, we didn't spend what we had approved, and so I didn't feel like it was appropriate for the increase to be based on that original number, because it had gone up so much. So I very much appreciate this number, because that is the actual. I also, and I don't know how much we've gone into this, just the conservative budgeting that's happening with this, and other years it's been, let's take a little bit off of electricity for this or that, and you're gonna spend it anyway. At the end of the year, the amount is clearly going to go up. So for us to actually look at this and how realistic it's going to be, I just think that's just a huge difference, and clearly it's going to be a large number. If we start picking off and say, this, like the list of what were called suggested ads on the budget that was given up to us, there were the mandatory ads that we needed for legal reasons and the suggested ads, but you're going to need them. If you cut a kindergarten teacher, even though you're going to have one class that's going to go over, and then in November you have to cut up classes and add a teacher, either way you're spending it. So why not come into it absolutely knowing, all the parts? And I really appreciate that in this budget, and I hope everybody else sees that when they say, oh my God, this is a giant budget.
And again, that's our intent.
Yeah.
And, I would tell you that Alex, or Mr. Dizio, and Ms. McKinnon did like a 3-year look back at a lot of the line items to kind of make sure that we were budgeting appropriately, and to your point, not trying to cut to make it a real
Being
number.
realistic.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
There's another quick point, I just thought of the same thing, was, again, we'll credit Mr. Dizio and Patty McKinnon in the finance office, just to see that, at least ask the city to cover some of these, out-of-pocket expenses, thinking outside the box, where we never really approached the city for certain items. They had it before, went back to us, and to Ms. Cormier's point, yes, they have to be paid, one way or the other. But it's just, maybe the city has some, tricks up their sleeve down at City Hall that can find us the money, or, willing to work with us somewhat on some of these line items that, are gonna be costly and expensive. And I think, the way you're doing it, Mr. Dizio, is, you gotta ask. So,
Gotta ask.
if the answer is no, you move on from there. But I appreciate, the out-of-box thinking and, trying to get to a solid number like we're doing tonight. So, just wanna make sure everybody gets recognition for the numbers that we have tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? Ms. Crowley?
The way that I'm looking at this budget is that, the school committee is taking the first step to look at redistricting, and we're doing our job to preserve assets and preserve, resources as much as possible. So I have no appetite to really cut anything or take anything out, particularly suggested ads, because I'm looking at it, it's like rise, soar, positions that we're probably going to need. So I'm not sure if suggested is right. And then the co-teachers is programmatic, like a new program initiative, and I believe that it's likely going to keep kids in inclusion and not move them into the separate programming, perhaps, right? So I'm not really feeling, plus there's been no mandate from the city, so I don't know why we would cut our own budget. But I think that there are things, we gave them notice that Esther was coming, or going, I should say. Over and over again, we said we would need help with Esther. And so I'm surprised that that hasn't been taken by the city, or the 1.8 that was taken in fiscal year '24. These things are surprising to me because they happened last year. So I'm just surprised that we're in the position that we are. Because Mayor Galvin had taken the 1.8 from our budget on the city side. So I would assume that that sets some sort of precedent. So I'm in favor of some discussion along those lines.
Well, I would say the dialogue's still ongoing.
Yeah, of course.
The door's not
Yeah.
closed.
No, of course not.
We were there this afternoon, so I think it's definitely,
Yeah, and there's a lot of moving parts, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Ms. Wetzel.
Kind of what Ms. Crowley said, but to echo the suggested ads, which are really mandatory, if we don't include these additional teachers, that puts us at risk for sending kids out of district, which costs substantially more than the salary of some of these teachers. So I think we need to take that into consideration. And I mentioned this yesterday, I'll say it again, keeping a kid in district if able to, oftentimes is what's best for the child. So we need to think about that too. It's not just the numbers, it's about the students too. And we need these teachers in our buildings to support the education that they deserve and need and that we are entitled to give them as a school. And I agree too with what Ms. Cormier said. I think that we need these numbers. This is what we need to operate, and some of these things are non-negotiables, like the salaries. That's a budget. That's a contract. We have to abide by that, and we should. The teachers deserve it. The staff needs that. They need to get paid, as the job they do is very important. So why take away when we're giving to such a good thing?
Thank you. Mrs. Susan.
I since this has been pretty much my entire finance meeting minutes, so I just will read you the final little takeaway from that, because we met on March 21st at 8 o'clock here at the Joyce, and we reviewed the suggested list of add-ons to our budget, and that list represents needs within the districts that will be very tough to be cut. The needs within our schools have changed, and the subcommittee feels additional staffing is needed to meet all the education needs for all of our students. Our budget is 16.9, and the goal of the budget was actually need, and we have not underestimated it, since this has already been there in areas that are over the budget from last year. That when we had electricity and we take away money from electricity, we know we're going to need it. So it's just a game that we've been playing to make it happen. The percentage of starting budget with all the mandated costs will be 15.4%, just to meet the starting budget from last year, and the mandated increases, contracts raise of 3.75, increase in utilities and busing, etc. That's just to keep the lights on, the kids in the school will be 15.4%. Last year's budget was started at the highest we've ever had, which was 19%. It was passed at 9% from the mayor, with an additional 1.5% by the time school opened, and a $1.8 million for the out-of-district tuitions were there. So we were well over 10% last year, with 10.5% with Mayor Galvin. A motion was made by Ms. Cormier and seconded by Mr. Austin to send the entire budget with 16.9% to the full committee, which is tonight, for their support to send to the mayor as presented. Without any indication of the number we need to land, it's hard to make decisions to cut things unless we know that we actually have to do that. And an additional motion was made to ask the mayor if he would take on the city side of the budget the following: sped transportation, sped out of district, and homeless transportation. All of these are high fluctuating accounts and hard to budget accurately. So that was a takeaway from that. So we can make a motion such as that tonight, or we can just sit here and just wait, see what happens. But, I mean, to me, to cut things that we don't even know, that we can do without, is gonna be a tough call. I mean, I know 16.9 is it's tough. It's gonna be a hard sell. But I don't know what else we're gonna do. If we know what we're gonna do with redistricting and we are gonna save $1 million, we could do that. But if we cut it, and then it doesn't come to fruition, then what do we do? So I mean, that was the recommendation of the finance subcommittee.
I think now might be just a good moment to pause and get clarification from Dr. Crowley in terms of your discussions with the mayor on a budget timeline.
Well, typically, we submit a budget early May to City Hall. I would tell you that, again, we were there this afternoon, and the mayor was complimentary of the willingness of the school committee to go into the redistricting process, knowing that that would take time, but that there might be budget implications. And so I would say that there's probably more flexibility because of the redistricting than there as far as a timeline goes, than there has been in the past. And so I do think that there's time to continue the dialogue with the city to find out if they're willing to take any of these items onto the city side, and to then find out what the potential redistricting impact would be. So I don't, again, that might mean that we might not be able to act tomorrow on the budget per se, but I think that the budget will shift predicated on some of the dialogue that happens and agreements that get made to put, like us, theoretically, right, the 1.8 million gets put back into this on the city side. So that would change the budget. So I wouldn't want to send this down as is, because I think there's still dialogue to have, but I appreciate the urgency to try to move this forward. So
Well, it's just not even to move, but we need direction, because I don't know what the full committee feels about that, as far as if we're at 16.9%, what would be our goal be? You know, if we have to get to 15, because the money that we get, or if the city takes onto their side, it's still going to be paid for by the taxpayers, whether it's paid on the city side or it's paid on the school side. It's just our budget percentage would look better. But I just think that we need to have some sort of direction, and we can sit back and do nothing for a couple of weeks and see what happens. But if we're not going to know on redistricting till mid-May, I mean, we're going to run up against letting people know about layoffs, should there be some. So we're going to really be in a tight bind at a very quick rate if we don't start taking some action somewhere. And I just think we owe it to the people to know, and all the students, what's going to happen. I mean, we have a lot of interest. We're getting emails still asking about what's going to go ahead, and when will they know, and when will these decisions be made. So I think we need to act sooner than later, especially on the redistricting. If that's going to happen and we can save us some money, we need to really put that on the fast track and see what we can save. And if we can come back with some answer as far as that he's willing to take something, then.
So on the redistricting, we talked about this last night. We have fortunately engaged in dialogue with a few consultants. We have a call scheduled tomorrow with one of the people that we've spoken to a few times. So we are moving that in real time.
Okay.
Let's see, Ms. Crowley and then Ms. Ross.
Yeah, if I may, Ms. Chisholm knows this, but the mayor's budget is really approved by the city council, so we still have a little bit more time before we get in front of the council. It really appropriates money to us. So I think even if we pass a budget, taking money out of that is easier than deciding we need more, right? So I think if it went in the opposite direction, we would be, but if we decide, oh, we actually don't need 16%, we only need 15% or 14%, I think.
So just for clarification for finance, so we're going to do nothing until we know.
Yeah, I know that's what your question was.
Yeah.
I think this is potentially just like last night.
Right.
The do-nothing option is not actually a do-nothing
Right.
option.
That holds.
And I'll take this moment to say, and I see City Council Liaison, Mr. Viola here as well, that I think, the collaboration from the City Council, the collaboration from the mayor is welcome, and I think, we can continue those conversations, and that is part of the action that we are taking to try to look at this budget.
I'm sorry, Megan. I think it's just, I think when in your negotiations now you say it is the will of the full committee that we discuss this in public meeting, that we are not really willing to cut anything at this point without further discussions between the superintendent. the chair, and that we really hope that they take some of the expenses from the school district onto the city side, unpredictable ones that make a lot of fiscal sense for taxpayers, actually. So, okay.
Thank you. Ms. Rollins?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was first presented with this budget, I was surprised, not because of the amount, but because of what the school had to survive off of from the previous budget, which I believe was 9%. And so the question I asked was, if we always needed this high amount, how did we survive off of 9%? I can't quote who, but I noticed the statement was something of, we get by. And so to know that we get by, to me, didn't sit well. So I was always in favor of let the truth stand. If this is what we need, let's present it. I did ask the question, is this what we need or is this what we want? Do we need Apple Watches? And they said, no, this is our need. So, again, I always go back to me as a dad. I think about what my kids need. My family has been in the position where we needed things and we had to cut corners. So to have to cut corners and push aside what's in need, to me, is a really sad situation to be presented in, especially how hard our district works. So I'm in favor of pushing this budget at what it is and let it be shown so that all can see what is needed. I do recall the mayor saying that he stands on, I can't quote, I won't quote, but he stands on what is needed by state law. And if I'm not mistaken, what we need here is all based on state law. So it's not like we're asking for, again, Apple Watches. We're asking for what's actually needed and what's governed by our state. So I just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you. Ms. Corey?
Thank you. And if I understood him correctly, I believe the mayor said that he was collecting the budgets from his other department heads this past Friday.
Right.
Which I think is just going to move us one step forward to him being able to tell us how we all fit into this. But I agree that passing it along as it is the best. This shows him what we need. And if he decides that we need to cut things from there, I think that's when the conversation happens. I mean, I don't know what we're going to cut, but I mean, it would be something that already exists, and that is unfortunate, but that's another, I think he is reasonable, and to have that conversation with him to say, this is what it would look like if we had to do that. So I appreciate that, talking about doing anything to remove at this point, it just seems, I think it's not genuine to what we do need. I think he needs to know specifically, and I know you guys have been speaking with him regularly. So I like this approach.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Watson?
Yeah, I think this is what we need. This is the number we need. Woburn's diverse. Our students are diverse. And we can't start cutting things that we are probably going to have to add back in anyway. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a logical way to budget. And these are our kids. They're very important. They're a huge part of our community. And we can't just start taking money away from something then they're going to see that in the classroom. There's going to be lack of supplies or electricity might go off, things like that. Not that dramatic, but we can't take away. If a kid needs it, a kid needs it. If a staff needs it, a staff needs it. And if that's what they need to do their job and this is what a kid needs to learn, then we are here to support that. And if that's the number, then that's the number. So I 100% support this budget as the number stands.
Mr. Mohan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, to Mr. Austin's point, you're absolutely right, Mr. Austin. Many, many budgets that I've gone through sitting here, this evening or as the budget process develops, and you have some great, caring people before us, and they're asking for 6 of these. And again, can you get by with 3? If they have to, they have to. So this, as Ms. Chisholm indicated, and as this indicates to us, this is what the school district needs today. And I really applaud Ms. Chisholm and her finance group. We need a starting point. Do we start here, or do we wait 2-3 weeks to get a point to start at another point? And what happened to all this thing? So I think, as difficult as it is, that is a scary number, Ms. Chisholm. You're absolutely right. If you told someone, the budget's this much, what? It's what it costs to run a school system. I know Mr. Diggio's been in City Hall. It's a multi-million-dollar corporation. We're just a small leg of that corporation. So I think, at least for this evening, perhaps Ms. Chisholm's Finance Committee is correct. We just send it down, allow this, the people to be figure it out with the mayor, and then we may have a new starting point. You know, is he gonna take a little bit of this, a little bit of that? And then we come back to the table and say, okay, it looks like he agreed to take, you know, a little of this, a little of that, or he took nothing and you're on your own and we go from there. So, again, it's difficult to, you know, send down a number like this, but it does give us a starting point, which it's new to the committee to have a starting point this early. Now, the what ifs. What if redistricting costs more? What if busing goes up? What if? We don't know those what ifs. We know that these are the needs of the district right now, as presented to the finance subcommittee, and the reasons behind it. And I'm sure they've got, you know, backup data to prove it. So, you know, give it a shot. I mean, even, you know, I know, Mr. Dizzer, you put in here like the energy cost. I've asked for years, lots of our buildings have solar energy on the roof. Great idea, and that goes back to the city's general fund. Never made sense to me. Why couldn't it come back to the school district directly to use, I'm sure it does, the credits or whatever it goes to pay our electricity bill, or to have, you know, help with the programming of, you know, what the students need in our buildings. So there's lots of out-of-box thinking again that is worth giving a shot. If it comes back a disaster, then, hey, you give it a shot, right? So I think to send this forward as is, to get us a starting point, might be in our best interest tonight. So thank you.
So, I know that there was a recommendation coming out of finance. I have not yet heard a motion on this. What I would say is, Dr. Crowley.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to get out in front of
Yes,
the motion.
please. And I had another half of my statement.
And I said this at finance too. I want to work collaboratively with City Hall, and I do believe that the dialogue is happening, and I feel that I appreciate the school committee's support of this budget as is, because I really do believe it is what we need. I think it might be a little premature to send this as is down to City Hall when we are trying to have a collaborative dialogue, and I would caution to the extent that I can. Doing that, again, we have, I had a meeting today, we can meet as often as humanly possible, but again, I want to try to maintain a collaborative approach with the city. Again, the mayor's comment today, everything is on the table, and so if I would not want to back anybody into a corner and then feel like, you know, we are then put into positions that I don't know that we need to be in right this minute, is my cautionary tale.
Mrs. Chisholm?
Well, what we could do is, I mean, if it would make you feel better, is just hold back and hold on to the budget and hope for a number for, you know, maybe for 2 weeks. We can still meet and somehow on finance and see what would, I mean, we have to do the bills tomorrow and pay the bills that we have this year, and hope that we can get some numbers, maybe even from redistricting or from somewhere else, or within your conversations that you're having, he'll come and let you know that he will be eager to take something on the other side, and that can play the fix and somehow give us a clue to where we're going to, because it's just, again, we're going to be up under contract obligations. So I just don't want it to be something that's done in a hurry, in haste, and not done correctly. So it's just, I mean, he knows our budget. He knows what we
Yes.
have in front of us, so he's fully aware that this is what we're working on. So, I mean, we could wait 2 weeks and to a second week meeting in April and see if by then we've had some communication. And if not, it'll be the wish of the committee.
And certainly, Mr. Viola has heard our discussions here and can bring those back to the council. And I would imagine that the mayor is aware of the conversations that we have had and will be having. So I appreciate those comments as well. Ms. Cormier, you have something?
Yeah, I just, I appreciate the insight from Dr. Crowley. I don't want to give the impression that we are saying, here you go, this is what we're doing, to the mayor. Clearly, this is a public budget at this point, so he can't see it. I didn't want, I guess I was getting the impression that maybe it would seem a little untoward for us to just deposit this in his lap, and so, which, I mean, I was under the impression that it would just give him something to work with sooner, but if it makes more sense to hold on for a number from him, or a little longer, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Maybe it's adversarial.
I don't want it to be that, and that is my point. Yes, I didn't think about it that way.
It's a
Pushing the hand and, yeah, nope, I do not want that, so
Right.
appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this point? I'd like to thank the committee for a really robust and good conversation on that topic, and I think we will certainly be revisiting this budget a number of times over the next month or so. And just to remind the public, we currently have a public hearing scheduled for April 26th. But as Dr. Crowley mentioned, there may be some flexibility on that timeline. So what we have in front of us is a proposed budget. We are continuing to have conversations with the mayor on that. We are continuing to have conversations around redistricting. We are continuing to have conversations about potential budget items that the city may take on. And so, certainly allowing those conversations to continue may get us to a better place. So, anything else on that topic for now? Okay. So we are going to move on then to the Student Opportunity Act. Dr. Crowley or Ms. Hill?
One quick question just before we do that.
Yes.
Do we need to vote to have the public hearing, or we just schedule a public hearing?
I would say we don't need to vote on that now. We will have a meeting in which
We're
we
planning to
approve
have
a
it.
budget for the public hearing, and at that time we would.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, so,
Who wants it?
yeah, so
I wasn't sure if you wanted to introduce me or you wanted to.
needing no introduction.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Assistant Superintendent, Courtney Young.
Okay, thank you. So, again, just for a little bit of background, just in case anyone doesn't know, in 2019, the Student Opportunity Act was voted in as part of how they provided kind of funding to public schools out of Chapter 70. It's not necessarily that we are provided like a certain number that we use for the Student Opportunity Act. It's just recognized that there was kind of a change in the funding structure based off of our district's commitment to closing achievement gaps in certain areas. And so really, I have the plan in front of you, and then I provided you the highlight, in part because the plan is a little cumbersome to go through, but I'll talk through both a little bit. But ultimately, as a district, we are required every 3 years to submit our Student Opportunity Act plan, in which we look at our student data and we recognize where are the areas that we have the greatest disparities, and then determine focus areas and 3 evidence-based practices that we will commit to doing over the next 3 years. And so really what it is it's not necessarily saying these are all these new things that we're going to do. It is really looking at recognizing what are the things that we already are doing. Are there some things maybe that we could have changed, but really what are we already doing, and really kind of focusing our time to. It's also kind of a recognition that we're committing our funding resources towards these areas. And this does not just include kind of single funding sources, so not just what we do in our budget, but also any funding sources that we use in the district. Are we always kind of thinking about what are our focus areas and trying to prioritize our spending in these places? When we give, as part of the Student Opportunity Act, when we give values like that we're going to be committing to reading specialists, which is what you'll see as part of it. It's not saying that this is like a binding agreement that we're doing that. It's what are we intending to most likely allocate in our budget over the next 3 years. And then if we don't get them, that's part of my report will be that we, it went through the budget process and we did or didn't get those things. But this is really what we are envisioning those allocations to look like. We have been, I think, really fortunate to have a really comprehensive strategic plan and also a really comprehensive literacy plan that were all designed very much around us looking at our subgroup analysis data already, which lent itself really well to thinking about the Student Opportunity Act. What you'll see is that nothing here should be anything you have not heard me talk about before. These are really just highlighting the efforts that we are already doing. And so our areas of focus are our students with disabilities and our multilingual learners as two of our subgroups that we recognize disparity in student achievement, not only in kind of overall achievement, but also growth. And so when looking at our kind of 3 focus areas, again, and you're welcome to go into the larger document or into the shorter one. My hope is that we can put this highlight version as kind of our public-facing document, a little bit easier to digest. But ultimately looking at our MTSS structure, so looking at enhancing and continuing the work of our elementary wing block, as well as all of our tiered systems of support. We're looking at, over the next few years, incorporating our SEL data better into this MTSS structure, as well as continuing the work of our inclusive and tiered literacy academies at the middle school and really building out that structure there. Additionally, we're looking at kind of funding will be allocated towards continuing to provide high-quality professional development in all of our structured literacy professional learning. And so on a kind of the budgetary end, really what that's saying is that what I imagine that we will continue to be looking to fund over the next 3 years is the continued reading specialists at the elementary and the middle school, our reading literacy interventionists, our professional development. We work with some incredible consultants, Melissa Orkin, Bonnie Singer. These are consultants that support our work, so continued funding in that area, as well as we begin to build out our MTSS structure more at the middle school. And what you'll see a little bit as I go into focus area 2 when we talk about math is over the next 3 years, I would imagine we're going to be looking at math specialists as well for middle schools. Our focus area 2, again, you've heard me talk about how we are kind of starting to phase into our next comprehensive plan around our math instruction. In 2019, we adopted high-quality instructional material at the middle schools in math that has had great success. We are in the process of the curriculum adoption process for K-5 and 9 through 12. And so this focus area is really on the purchasing of math curriculum, K-5, 9, 12, and the professional learning that goes with it. And then, of course, as I mentioned in the first focus area, also the math specialist. Again, this plan is over 3 years, and so I'm just anticipating over the next 3 years, possibly looking to allocate funds in these directions. And then the last one is, again, and I don't know if I said this is in the beginning, but I really tried to merge not only kind of the data, the strategic plan, but also the recommendations that have come forth through our tiered monitoring in both for ML and special education, which is not yet public, but thinking about what are the things that we're already going to be working on and allocating our funding towards in the next 3 years within our tiered monitoring, especially for our multilingual learners. And so you can see in focus area 3, this is really the increased effective use of our WIDA framework. This is not only talking about our additional need of ESL teachers, ML teachers, but also how we're supporting our general education staff around SCI. This is where the multilingual learner coaches that are in the current budget are reflected in focus area 3. Again, this is also really focused on professional development. Again, these are all things that really are just highlighting. This is not things that we are already doing or that we've talked about previously. I will say, too, that you are, although Ms. Ryan, in the reading of this, really wanted me to keep clicking more boxes. We only submit 3, as I told her. She really wanted me to keep going. But we submit 3 focus areas. This is not supposed to be like this is not supposed to be our strategic plan in that it's not like an exhaustive list of everything that we are doing. It is really looking at what are 3 evidence-based practices that we're going to put in place or continue to support that support this our 2 subgroup areas. Of course, there are many other things beyond these that we are doing as part of the process.
before I call on anyone, I want to note, you said middle school math specialist, so somewhere Dr. Wells has a lot of questions for you.
I know, I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh my
Like,
gosh.
why should we wait till
He's,
he's here to say that?
he's somewhere, just the curiosity sparked.
Down the hallway?
Somewhere, I'm sure you can phone a friend.
It's funny, he was doing like a peer from underneath
Yeah.
them.
Lean back and
Mr. Moreno, do you have?
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, again, you know, a couple of curriculum subcommittee meetings a while back, Ms. Young briefly told us about the, you know, upcoming Student Opportunity Act highlights, kind of like, you'll see this soon. Well, here it is, 18 pages, I believe, so it's just not an easy document. And, you know, she did highlight and emphasize to us that, you know, the 3 categories, like she said. If you look on here, there's instructions, click here, go there, do this, do that. I mean, this is an intensive 3-year plan for the district. So I just want to highlight the efforts behind this. And, you know, in the long run, what it's going to get us. Perhaps math, you know, for middle school, perhaps IML students, inclusive school communities, retention programs. So I just, I'm looking forward to some of what you have in here in a 3-year span. And again, I want to, you know, congratulate you and your department for compiling it all and submitting it to the right people at the right time. I know there was a deadline on this, and it's a lot of data, again, you know, referencing Dr. Wells, but it's now being presented to the right people in the right way, and hopefully get us some positive feedback. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Any other questions for Ms. Young? Ms. Crowley?
I just have a comment. It's really nice to see how this plan submission really echoes in our budget, and also echoes to what, when we had that conversation at Finance with Director Caldwell. Is that the last name?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Kind of brain thing. But it speaks to the challenges that she saw in the district too, and how it just ties really together nice. Really targeting those 2 accelerated groups, students with disabilities and multilingual learners, in the way in which we're going to close those gaps. So it's nice to see. It's a nice overview of the district's initiatives. It ties in nicely to the budget and also the strategic plan. So thank you for all your work on this.
All right. Mrs. Chisholm?
On the district-wide, it says $512,000 is what the anticipated amount of funding that we will need.
So the way that the funding works.
Okay.
Is that it is not we are not saying that we are going to do this. It is saying anticipated allocations that would be advocated in our budgets over the next 3 budget cycles total.
Okay.
And so it's taking the total number of what would be, so for example, for high school math curriculum, I'm taking what I'm getting as an invoice for 1 year of the program, as well as what would be potential costs for the following 2 years. However, that is not, we have not picked a program, so I'm going off of what is my best estimate value on all of these. For example, the other one is high, the first one is so high because I had to do all of the reading specialists that you currently have in the budget. It's
Right.
what I'm putting as what would be an estimated value of funding all 9 of them for the next 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
see, so it's kind of a funny number. I spoke to our partner at the Department of Education prior to beginning the writing this to understand this portion, and my question similar was like, I could say I'm going to put an ML coach in, but if it doesn't get funded, like, is that a problem? And her point was, no, we just want to see that you are advocating for these things through your budget cycles, and as part of my reflection yearly, I can say, you know, if we ended up not getting the ML coaches, that they were part of the budget process, but this is why they were not there. However, the following year, we will aim to be providing allocation those. This is supposed to help us prioritize, but again, it is not a binding commitment. And I will say, because of that, like, I didn't do the high school curriculum and PD to like the penny. I did what was the estimated value over the next 3 years. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. So if we don't, but what happens if we don't?
Nothing.
Okay.
I did this for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So if I don't get it, I'm not in trouble.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
If you don't get it, they can't take it back.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. All set, Mr. Chisholm?
Yep.
All right. Ms. Wetzel, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. I just want to say thank you for all the hard work that you put into this. It's really interesting kind of reading through this deep dive here. And I really think it's wonderful for the students that are affected, because some of the things I've noticed in here, like chronic absenteeism, higher suspension rate, higher school dropout rate, are higher among those ML students and special education students. So I'm hopeful that this plan will really help mitigate some of that and really help our student population succeed. So thank you for that. And that's really what I have. Thank you.
Any further for Ms. Young or for Dr. Crowley? No? Okay. So we can move on to our last.
I need to
Take a
vote.
vote. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We have to take a vote.
Motion to approve Student Opportunity Act as presented by Ms. Young this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Or whatever
Any
the act
discussion
is.
on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right. So now we can move on to, and thank you very much, Ms. Young, for your efforts on this.
Yes, it is.
And now we can move on to school choice.
Yeah, so this is the annual question of whether or not Woburn wants to have students from other districts come to our school system, and which is called school choice. As the committee knows, we don't allow that. So my recommendation is, given the multiple moving parts, that we continue with that practice, since we don't know exactly what our numbers will look like specifically at elementary school. So, and we do have to take this as a vote annually. So I felt like tonight would be an opportune time, given the number of, again, moving parts, to have this vote.
I would like to make a motion that we not adopt school choice.
Second.
On the motion.
Yep.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just again, I know you do this each year, Dr. Crowley, just explain again, the emphasis behind the no for Woburn, just in case the audience at home is wondering, it might be new to some people, and the reasoning behind it.
I think the reasoning behind it is, if we're in the middle of redistricting, we don't know how many kids are going to be at each different grade level. So then to open up Woburn Public Schools to students from other districts kind of is not in the best interest of the Woburn Public Schools this year, given the number of moving parts.
And as you stated, this is the annual vote for the school districts anyway, so we may, some point say yes, but right now it's a no.
Yes, and so it is an annual vote. So if in a year or two, the committee, if we have space and the committee wants to say yes, the benefit to saying yes, just to be clear, is that Chapter 70 money flows from the sending district to Woburn. So that there is a benefit to saying yes financially, but again, given the complexity of where we are with the number of seats in different places, my recommendation would be to defer saying yes and say no this year.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification, appreciate it.
Any additional questions?
And that would also preclude Woburn kids from choicing into other schools, is that no? Or
No.
That's up to the other schools.
That's other,
They're
yeah, every
accepting
district
Excellent.
makes their own determination.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anything further on that? All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of rejecting school choice for this fiscal year? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, so that closes reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff. We can move on to subcommittee reports. I feel like we have done finance and personnel justice tonight.
Yep, but we will be meeting tomorrow, so if anybody has any wisdom they'd like to pass along, we can take it under our wing and do our best.
And was there anything in your minutes that was not reflected in?
No.
Okay.
No, Mr. Vizio did a great job.
All right, community relations? You
We
did
did not meet.
Curriculum and data trends?
Have not met?
Okay. Policy subcommittee?
Yes, quick meeting. We met on Friday, March 22nd, 8:15 a.m. in the superintendent's conference room. Present were myself, Mr. Mulrennan, Ms. Crowley, Superintendent Crowley, and Jennifer Judkins. We talked about a few policies. So the IJNDB, the use of technology in instruction, Ms. Judkins had presented this to us in 2021, very comprehensive policy, and there were some updates that, since it came up in the MASC policy update newsletter, that she wanted to add. So we first are going to change the categorization from IJNDB to the more sort of head of the IJND, and there were a couple language changes, simple things, that has been sent to the full committee, and when it is time to vote on it at our next meeting, it will be included in the agenda, which I do like to normally do for discussion and voting, but I was not able to do that. So I would like to have this moved forward from the tabling of a previous meeting to now be a discussion item.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second?
Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
There were a few other policies that we had brought forward just because they were in there, and Ms. Judkins did not feel they were necessary because we have a comprehensive policy. So IJND, as recommended by MASC, IJNDB, IJNBC, and JICJ, we are just going to let die on the table. Same as KDC as well. Next was the dress code update, JICA, which was provided by Mike Joyce with updated language. There was no change in the language as Dr. Crowley consulted with the high school principal, and so we moved 3-0 to then again move this from an information item from a previous meeting to a discussion item at this meeting, so I will make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second. But on the motion,
On the motion.
discussion, so do we do it now, or are we going to do it the next meeting? Because I do have some issues.
So we could do
that-
either. Honestly, we could, I mean, unfortunately, like I said, I like to have it on the agenda, so I wasn't sure if people were going to have comments. We can also discuss it more next time, so if you want to
Yeah.
make some comments now,
Yeah.
I'm open to those.
Yeah, no, I just have some concerns with the lack of structure. And I know some of the things might be hard for people to accept, but I just think that if we're opening it up for, and I get the pajama thing for kids, but I also think that we need to kind of stress to students that, you know, almost dress for success and not come to school like they've slept in it all night. And I think that when we're allowing kids to wear things to school that are not appropriate for school, it is difficult. So but I'll print it out and I'll send along my comments, but I do really have some concerns with the lack of structure. And I think when we start giving a lot of freedom to kids, it's going to just blow up in our faces, and it's not going to be pretty. And I just could hear Mr. Norton yelling in my ear right now, but the hats that are being allowed to wear, and I mean, one thing, if it's their culture that they have to wear these things, that's perfectly fine, but we're opening up the gates to, when we leave it, something that's just suggested.
And
So.
I would also recommend looking at the high school handbook, because that was something that last time we talked about this, that was brought up, that there is specifically dressing for a business interview kind of language around that, so that may also help.
Because we approve that every year too, so we'll
Yeah,
have to.
yep.
So it sounds like there's discussion to be had on this. Why don't we advance this to an agenda item for next meeting, and we can have a full discussion and deliberation on it.
Yep.
All right.
And next, okay, there was GBEE personnel use of technology, which is a new policy we've been discussing, remains on the table for now. Going to need a closer look at that on the next policy subcommittee meeting. And EHAA, district security related to technology. Ms. Judkins felt that this is a good idea to have, but we haven't really hashed it out yet and updated. She wasn't happy with the language from MASC. She wanted to really work on that, so we'll be bringing that forward at a later date. And we adjourned at 8:45 a.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Resources and capital planning. I feel like we did justice to your minutes last night, but I don't know
Yes.
if you wanted to add anything. to
I
that.
just wanted to add, additionally, on the 20th, the mayor discussed a concept with the school committee about the school department and the city sharing a facilities director, and didn't really get into specifics, but just sort of made it, it's still in the idea form. And Mrs. Chisholm was recognized to express concerns about taking that authority away from the school committee. The mayor addressed some level of her concerns, but indicated that that's not the intent of the city, and the mayor simply just wants to reduce redundancies between the city and the school department. We took no action, but I wanted to make the committee aware of that discussion in the public. I went over the space capacity issues last night, so I will not refrain from those. But I do want to quickly go over my building committee minutes. And I just want to say two things. I want to just name the people on the committee and what our next steps are. It's myself, Lou DeMambro, Joe Demers, Christy Nickerson, Pat Chisholm, Courtney Young, Maureen Ryan, Brandon Etheridge, Dan Martell, Mark Kavicki, Dr. Matt Crowley, Charlie Doherty, the city auditor, Kate Martin, a former teacher, and Jen Young from CPAC. And I just want to let the public know that we'll be doing a walkthrough of the 5 buildings in question, the Alta Vesselin, Scott Old Wyman, Joyce and the Kennedy on April 13th.
But that's just
our
for the
next
committee,
action.
just so the public doesn't realize.
I'm sorry?
It's just for the committee, it's not for public.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's not a public meeting, not everybody can come like a Halloween
Yeah.
parade, so to speak. But we'll be doing that because that's going to be a key action for us to continue with our work. And then in May, we think we're going to have like a question and answer session with Donna Dinesco. So that's what's on, so we're in a lot of work with that subcommittee. I just wanted to update the committee on that.
Thank you for that. I was actually intending to make building committee a permanent sort of
Sure.
presence on our agenda.
Yeah.
So we're going to move forward with that. But thank you for that update as well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate everybody's participation on that building committee. It's very important. So, thank you.
All right. And student services.
Yes, we did meet. So we met on March 22nd at 8:47 a.m. in the superintendent's conference room. And in attendance were Dr. Crowley, Pat Chisholm, Alan Crowley, Julie Cotton, and myself. And we had a couple topics. Our first one was special education updates, and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, completed its tiered focus monitoring process for both special education and multilingual learners. Results are not in yet, but we'll have those in due time. And the team has put a great deal of work into this. Secondly, the department continues to hire more staff. Right now, they're currently onboarding several team chairs, and there is a need for more paraprofessionals. Staff right now are completing the new IEP training across the district, and Power Schools will actually have a dedicated space for the IEP inside of it, which is something that hasn't been done before, so it'll be a nice way to have all student information in one place. And the CPAC update, which was given by Ms. Cotton, the president of the CPAC. They are gearing up for their 18th annual college career fair, which is actually today. So it was from 6:30 to 8:30 at the high school. And it's both a college and transition fair this year. In the past, it's only been a college fair. And they actually haven't been in person for 5 years. So they're really excited to be back and meeting with families. And there's a list of the colleges and the programs attending, and you can find those in my notes. And there was also in my notes a link to the website with additional information about the fair. And our next topic was support of LGBTQ plus students and staff and a potential resolution of affirmation. And a thank you to Ms. Rena Mazur for emailing the committee regarding safety and support of our LGBTQ students and staff inside of our building. So that stemmed from her email. And this subcommittee is in support of putting together a resolution of affirmation for our LGBTQ staff and students, but we are going to work with the Spectrum Club at the Woburn High School as well as the advisor to get their input and support as well prior to putting something together. But we do, as it stands, support that. And future topics, continue to work on the LGBTQ plus students and staff and a potential resolution of affirmation, and then development of goals and long-term agenda items between administration, CPAC, school, and the school committee. And it was short. We adjourned at 9:15 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving into correspondence, I gave a rundown of the correspondence we received on the redistricting issue last week. We did have several other communications that actually came in today, as well as since our last regular meeting. One, Dr. Crowley, I wonder if you might want to speak a little bit about this, but the letter that you forwarded MASS, MASC, AFT Massachusetts, and MTA on the inflation rate for Chapter 70. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like being put on the spot like this.
I
I mean,
meant
you know, I sent you, I sent an email, a correspondence to the committee. Really, what it's talking about is the idea that the inflation rate isn't keeping up with Chapter 70, bottom line. And there's an effort at the state level to try to allow the percent to increase beyond where it currently is. It's supported, to your point, it's supported by everybody, and so that really was the gist of the letter.
If it were the will of the committee, it might be an interesting idea to write a letter in support of that to our state delegation. If somebody wanted to make a motion to that effect, I'd be happy to do so.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor of directing me to write a letter to the state delegation?
Aye. Just really
Any
like
opposed?
making you write some letters.
Yeah,
I mean, want to do
every now and then, you know.
your skills
You just
up.
he didn't get to do the resolution.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. We had a few other emails. Radhika Srinivasan wrote to us to discuss the adjusting of school start times, advocating for a later start time for high school, earlier for elementary. This is something that's come up a number of times over the past several years. Paul Scanlon wrote in to advocate for the return of computer classes to the budget for the middle schools, and then several related to the redistricting. Matt Elaine wrote to us with some thoughts on redistricting and also thoughts on the process that we have that we've engaged in, largely complimentary. Caitlin Skinner wrote in to request that we provide time for students to get to know new schools, preferably while schools are in session, if they have been redistricted. Kimberly Kaufman wrote us regarding the plans for location of preschool when it comes to redistricting. That's some in process, and that may be part of our discussions. And Sridhar Ramachandran wrote to us advocating for the use of choice-based redistricting should the redistricting hit snags, or if that allows us a little flexibility. I don't know if any other committee members had any correspondence since our last regular meeting. Okay. In terms of future agenda items, we have a dress code on the agenda item as well. Any other suggestions for future agenda items?
Perhaps, Mr. Chairman, I could vote for last day of school. I can't anticipate any more snow days, but we never know.
Yeah, usually,
Yes, calendar was my next question as well.
yeah, we do typically wait till April.
Yeah.
but-
Who knows?
Yes, indeed. At least past April 1, remembering that blizzard. All right, so we will put a calendar vote and potentially last day of school vote.
I'll make sure Pat double checks it before I go live.
Oh, that's right, too.
Someone not counting over here in the corner, like with a little stone.
All right.
Before it.
Any other future agenda items to put forward? No? All right.
Motion
Given
to
that,
adjourn.
there we go.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We are adjourned.